In the heart of Chicago, 16-year-old Maya Williams uncovers a hidden clause in a multi-billion-dollar merger contract that could destroy her mother's employer, Hale Investments. What starts as curiosity turns into a fight for truth, justice, and survival. Facing powerful adversaries like CEO Jackson Hale's wife, Clara, and slick businessman Derek Vaughn, Maya risks everything to expose their deceit. From boardrooms to courtrooms, this gripping tale of courage, betrayal, and redemption will keep you on edge. How far would you go to uncover the truth? Watch till the end to see how one brave girl changes everything, proving that even the smallest voices can bring down the mightiest empires. Let's dive in. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as Maya Williams pushed her cleaning cart down the polished marble hallway of Hale Investments. It was just another late-night shift for her and her mother, Denise, who worked tirelessly to keep the towering corporate empire spotless. At 16, Maya wasn't like most teenagers glued to their phones or scrolling through social media. She had always been different, curious, observant, and unafraid to ask questions that others might shy away from. That night, something unusual caught her eye. A folder labeled Final Draft Merger Agreement lay slightly open in the copier, a tray on the 27th floor. Something about it called out, not curiosity but instinct. Her grandfather, a retired accountant, had taught her how to read between the lines of legal documents during their weekend documentary watching sessions. He'd often said, "Sometimes the truth is buried where no one bothers to look." Maya hesitated for a moment before opening the folder. As she scanned the dense legal language, her heart began to race. Buried deep within sub-paragraph C, line 3 was a clause so subtle it could easily be missed. It shifted all liabilities onto Hale Investments if anything went wrong after the merger: fraud lawsuits, defaults, everything. If signed, this contract would leave Jackson Hale's company holding the bag while Derek Vaughn's firm walked away clean. Her mind raced. What should she do? Tell her mom? No, Denise would only worry about losing their jobs. But this was too big to ignore. This wasn't just a mistake, it was deliberate. A trap set with precision. The next morning, Maya found herself standing at the glass doorway of the boardroom, her borrowed sneakers squeaking faintly against the gleaming floor. Through the glass walls, she watched Jackson, Hale the CEO, hover his pen over the document, seconds away from signing. His wife Clara sat stiffly beside him, her sharp eyes darting around the room. Across the table, Derek Vaughn grinned confidently, exuding the charm of someone who knew he had already won. Summoning every ounce of courage, Maya stepped inside. The boardroom fell silent as all eyes turned to her, the janitor's daughter, interrupting a high-stakes meeting. Someone muttered under their breath, "She shouldn't even be here." But Maya didn't flinch. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I read that clause on page 14. It shifts all merger-related liabilities to Hale Investments if anything goes wrong after the merger. Fraud lawsuits, defaults, anything. Your company takes the full hit. Vaughn's firm walks away clean." The executives exchanged uneasy glances. One man pulled the document closer. Another tapped furiously on his tablet to double-check the page. Clara leaned forward, her tone icy. "This is nonsense. She's a child." But Jackson Hale paused, his silver brows furrowed. Slowly, he flipped to page 14 and scanned the text. Something in his jaw tightened. Derek laughed awkwardly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Are we really giving weight to conspiracy theories from someone who polishes door handles?" Maya's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained unwavering. "You can laugh, but if he signs that, your company's name will be on every lawsuit that follows." For a long moment, the room was frozen. Then Jackson lowered his pen. "Escort her out," he instructed security, though there was an unreadable look in his eyes as they led Maya away. Just before the door shut behind her, Maya locked eyes with Jackson. For a brief second, she saw not disdain, but recognition, a mild flicker of doubt crossing his face. Had she planted a seed of suspicion? Back at home, Maya sat quietly with her mother, who scolded her for meddling. Meanwhile, Jackson reopened the contract in his private office, staring at the clause Maya had pointed out. Was it possible she was right? And if she was, what did that mean for his company and his marriage? The morning after Maya's intervention, in the boardroom, the atmosphere at Hale Investments was electric with tension. Employees whispered nervously about the janitor's daughter who had dared to step into their world, a place where she supposedly didn't belong. For Denise Williams, the fallout was immediate and devastating. They were placed on leave, pending review, a decision that left her shaking as she tried to explain it to Maya during their silent ride home. Back in their small apartment, mother and daughter sat in silence, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them like an invisible storm cloud. Denise finally broke the quiet with a sharp tone. "You shouldn't have done that, Maya. You've put us both at risk." Maya looked at her hands, guilt gnawing at her insides. "Mom, I couldn't just stand by. That contract, it wasn't right. It was a trap." Denise sighed deeply, her voice softening but still laced with worry. "I clean those floors so we can eat, Maya, not so you can march into boardrooms like you own the place." "I know," Maya whispered, tears welling up. "But what if no one else saw it? What if they signed it?" Her words hung in the air, unanswered. Denise didn't reply, but the fear in her eyes said more than words ever could. She clicked through job listings on her phone, searching for something, anything, to replace what they might lose. Maya watched her, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her young shoulders. Meanwhile, Jackson Hale couldn't shake off the unease that had taken root in his mind. He sat alone in his private office, staring at the unsigned contract spread across his desk like a crime scene. His finger traced over the clause Maya had pointed out. Subparagraph C, line 3. How had he missed it? Worse yet, how had his entire legal team missed it? He opened his laptop and began cross-referencing other contracts signed with Derek Vaughn's company, Global Ventures. As he sifted through pages of dense legal language, offshore accounts, and subsidiary names, a pattern emerged. One too coordinated, too clean. Something wasn't adding up. His phone buzzed, startling him from his thoughts. It was Clara. "You didn't sign it, did you?" she asked immediately, her voice clipped. "No," Jackson replied flatly. "You're overthinking this." "Jackson, we vetted Derek's firm. You're letting that girl get inside your head." Jackson paused, gripping the phone tightly. "She saw what none of us did." Clara laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "Come on, Jackson. She's a child, the janitor's daughter. Are you really going to question me because of some teenager?" Jackson didn't respond. Instead, he ended the call abruptly and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Doubt crept in, uninvited but undeniable. Was it possible Clara knew more than she let on? That evening, while scrolling through public records online, Maya received an email from an unknown sender named Robert Barnes. The subject line read, "You saw it too." Her heart raced as she opened it. Inside was a short message. "I used to work there. I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen." Maya hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, slowly, she began to type. "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" Minutes later, her inbox pinged again, because someone needs to stop them before they bury another company. "Meet me tomorrow at noon. Bring everything you've found." As Maya prepared to meet Barnes, Jackson discovered an old internal audit report buried deep in his safe, a document flagged 2 years ago, but ignored by his board. Signed by none other than Robert Barnes, it warned of centralized risk exposure and potential liability traps. Suddenly, pieces started clicking into place. Who exactly was Barnes, and why had he disappeared? Later that night, Maya opened her laptop to find an encrypted file sent by Barnes containing evidence linking Clara Hale to offshore accounts tied to Derek Vaughn. At the same time, Jackson received an anonymous email with a chilling audio clip. Clara conspiring with Vaughn about silencing anyone who got in their way. The final line froze him. If Jackson questions it, remind him what he has to lose. What would happen when these two threads intertwined, and how far would Clara and Vaughn go to protect their secrets? The weight of the evidence was growing, heavier with each passing day, but Maya Williams refused to let it crush her. After receiving the mysterious envelope from Robert Barnes, containing a thumb drive and a chilling note that read, "They know I'm helping you. Don't come back. Here, find someone you trust soon." She knew she couldn't fight this battle alone anymore. She needed allies, people who understood the stakes and could help turn whispers into action. That evening, as the city lights flickered through their apartment window, Maya sat hunched over her laptop, decrypting files Barnes had sent her. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the enormity of what she was uncovering. Each document revealed another layer of deceit. Offshore accounts, shell companies, and forged signatures tying Clara Hale and Derek Vaughn to 3 failed mergers that left other firms bankrupt. It wasn't just fraud. It was a calculated strategy designed to enrich themselves while destroying others. Her mother Denise hovered nearby, watching silently. "Maya?" she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "You're playing with fire." "I know, Mom," Maya replied without looking up. "But if I don't do something, they'll keep doing this. To us, to everyone else like us." Denise sighed deeply, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. For the first time, she didn't argue. Maybe it was because she saw the determination in her daughter's eyes, or maybe it was because, deep down, she knew Maya was right. Either way, Denise stayed close, offering quiet support as Maya pieced together the puzzle. Meanwhile, Jackson Hale found himself sitting across from Victoria Chan, a civil rights attorney known for taking on impossible cases. They met in his car outside an abandoned courthouse, far from prying eyes. Victoria's black wool coat flapped behind her like a cape as she slid into the passenger seat, her sharp gaze assessing him. "You've got a mess on your hands," she said bluntly, after reviewing the documents he'd brought. "This isn't just contract fraud. This is organized financial subversion, racketeering at its finest." Jackson nodded grimly. He trusted Victoria. She had a reputation for integrity, even when it cost her clients. But this case wasn't just about saving his company anymore. It was personal. "I need to protect my business," he admitted. "But there's someone else involved, a girl, a 16-year-old named Maya Williams. She caught all of this before any of us did." Victoria raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A 16-year-old? She's not just a kid," Jackson insisted. "She's the reason I stopped signing that contract. Without her, I wouldn't have seen it." For the first time since entering the car, Victoria smiled faintly. "Then, she may be our most valuable witness." The next morning, Maya returned to Hale Tower. Not as a janitor's daughter, but as someone Jackson Hale wanted to see. Security had tightened significantly since her last visit, but one of the junior staff members, someone who recognized her from late-night cleaning shifts, slipped her past the guards. "Mr. Hale said if you ever came back, I should take you straight up," the young man whispered nervously. When Jackson saw her standing in his office doorway, something shifted in his expression. Gone was the skepticism, replaced by a mix of guilt and gratitude. He extended his hand, not as a CEO, but as a man acknowledging his own blind spots. "I owe you more than an apology," he said sincerely. "I owe you the truth." Maya looked up at him, her voice quiet but resolute. "Then let's get it out before someone else disappears." They spent hours side by side in Jackson's private conference room, surrounded by papers, laptops, and whiteboards filled with timelines and connections. Victoria joined them shortly afterward, nodding approvingly at Maya's meticulous notes. "This is your war now," she told Maya firmly. "But with the right moves, we win it before they even realize we're fighting." Despite the tension, Maya felt a spark of hope. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Jackson and Victoria weren't just powerful figures. They were believers in justice, willing to stand alongside her no matter the cost. As the trio worked together, Victoria discovered something alarming. Clara Hale had attempted to authorize a $2.5 million transfer from one of Hale Investments' dormant reserve accounts. The transaction had been flagged and stopped just in time, but it confirmed what they already suspected. Clara wasn't just complicit, she was actively working against her husband. Worse still, Victoria uncovered encrypted emails between Clara and Derek Vaughn discussing contingency plans to discredit Maya publicly. That night, as Maya reviewed the latest batch of documents, her laptop screen suddenly went black. Her phone buzzed with a single text message. Stop digging or we dig first. Who had sent it? And how far would they go to silence her? The courtroom was a battlefield, but not the kind Maya Williams had ever imagined. At just 16, she found herself seated in the front row of courtroom 12B, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. Outside, reporters crowded the courthouse steps, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, hungry for sound bites and headlines. Inside, the air was heavy with tension, the kind that made it hard to breathe. Jackson Hale sat beside Victoria Chan, his face unreadable, though his knuckles were white from gripping the edge of the table. Across the aisle, Derek Vaughn exuded arrogance, leaning back in his chair as if this trial were nothing more than an inconvenience. Clara Hale, however, looked smaller somehow, her sharp edges dulled by the weight of what was unfolding around her. She avoided eye contact with Jackson, her gaze fixed on the floor. When Victoria stood to present the case, the room seemed to shrink. Her voice was calm but commanding as she laid out the facts piece by piece. Shell companies buried in offshore accounts, forged signatures, and manipulated contracts designed to funnel liabilities to Hale Investments while protecting Vaughn's firm. Each word felt like a hammer striking a nail into the coffin of Vaughn and Clara's empire. But it wasn't until Victoria introduced the audio clip, the one where Clara coldly plotted to silence anyone who questioned her, that the room collectively held its breath. Clara's hand twitched on the table, her composure cracking for the first time. Derek shifted uncomfortably, his polished grin fading. The jury scribbled furiously, their eyes darting between the evidence and the defendants. It was clear, the truth was unraveling, thread by thread. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Victoria turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Maya Williams to the stand." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled for their notebooks as Maya rose slowly, her borrowed blazer hanging loosely on her slight frame. She walked to the witness stand with quiet determination, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. As she swore in, her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly when she placed them on the Bible. Victoria began gently, her tone almost maternal. "Miss Williams, how did you first come to be involved in this matter?" Maya took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room before settling on Victoria. "I was helping my mom clean the 27th floor. There was a contract left in the copier tray. Something about it didn't feel right, so I read it." Victoria nodded encouragingly. "What stood out to you?" "There was a clause buried deep inside," Maya explained, her voice gaining strength. "It transferred all liability from Vaughn's firm to Mr. Hale's company if something went wrong. Only one side would take the hit." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her expression thoughtful. "Why did you speak up? You were 16. No one asked you to read that contract." Maya hesitated, glancing at Clara, then at Derek. When she spoke, her words carried a weight far beyond her years. "Because just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The courtroom froze. Even the judge paused mid-note-taking, his pen hovering above the paper. Clara's jaw tightened, and Derek's smirk faltered for the first time. The jury exchanged glances, their expressions softening, not just toward Maya, but toward the idea that courage could come from unexpected places. The cross-examination was brutal. Vaughn's attorney, a wiry man with a nasal voice, tried to rattle her. "Miss Williams, do you consider yourself an expert in business, law, "No, sir," Maya replied without hesitation. "Then why should we trust your interpretation of such complex legal language?" he pressed, his tone dripping with condescension. Maya met his gaze squarely. "I don't think you need a degree to see when someone's being set up to fail." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. The lawyer flushed, stammering as he returned to his seat. Victoria gave Maya a small, proud smile before sitting down. For the first time since the trial began, the momentum had shifted decisively. Later that day, Jackson took the stand. His testimony was brief but powerful. When Victoria asked him why he believed Maya, he paused, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. "My gut told me she was right," he admitted. "But more than that, I remembered something I'd forgotten. That integrity doesn't depend on status. Sometimes the janitor's daughter sees the cracks before the board does." Clara followed, her testimony breaking under the weight of the prosecution's evidence. When the audio clip played again, her own voice cold and calculating, she broke down, confessing her role in the scheme. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she sobbed. "I thought if I could just push the deal through, Jackson wouldn't have to know." Outside the courthouse, the world buzzed with anticipation. Maya exited through a side door flanked by Victoria and her mother. Jackson trailed behind them, his expression unreadable. "You didn't have to come," Maya said quietly. "I owed it to you," he replied. "To be the man you thought I was when you walked into that boardroom." She smiled faintly. "You're getting there." That night, as Maya reviewed the final pieces of evidence at home, her laptop pinged with an encrypted message from Robert Barnes. Attached was a video file showing Clara meeting secretly with a federal clerk, a potential ally within the system. The caption read, "They're planning a counterstrike." Before Maya could alert Victoria or Jackson, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Tomorrow will change everything." What awaited them in court? The courthouse steps groaned under the weight of flashing cameras and murmuring crowds as gray clouds hung low above downtown Chicago. The air buzzed with anticipation, a mix of hope and dread that seemed to electrify every breath. Inside courtroom 12B, the atmosphere was stifling, thick with tension, heavy with unspoken truths. Jackson Hale adjusted his tie for the 100th time, his fingers trembling slightly as he glanced at the wooden double doors behind him. Victoria Chan stood by his side, her notes neatly organized in a leather folder, her expression calm but resolute. 2 rows behind them sat Maya Williams, dressed simply in a white blouse and dark blazer, her hair neatly braided. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, but her eyes were sharp, gleaming with quiet fire. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Across the aisle, Derek Vaughn exuded an air of practiced indifference, while Clara Hale sat. Beside him, her face pale and drawn, her lips pressed into a thin line. "All rise," the bailiff called as the judge entered, his robes sweeping behind him like shadows. The room fell silent, save for the faint rustle of papers and the occasional creak of chairs adjusting under nervous bodies. Victoria opened the proceedings with precision, painting the picture not with fiery rhetoric but with cold, hard facts. She laid out contracts, dates, forensic analyses, one by one exposing the network of shell companies and forged authorizations that funneled corporate liabilities straight to Hale Investments, while Vaughn and Clara profited quietly offshore. Each piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of their empire. Clara didn't look at Jackson once. Her gaze remained fixed on the floor, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Victoria stood, her voice steady but firm. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Maya Williams to the stand." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled for their notebooks, cameras clicking wildly as Maya rose from her seat. She stepped forward slowly, not as a victim, not even as a child, but as the first person in the building who dared to speak the truth. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore in, and took her seat. Victoria smiled gently, her tone almost maternal. "Miss Williams, how did you first come to be involved in this matter?" Maya's voice was steady, carrying a weight far beyond her years. "I was helping my mom on the 27th floor. She's on the night cleaning staff. I saw the contract in the copy room. The signature at the bottom didn't look right, and when I read the fine print, it didn't sound right either." Victoria nodded, encouraging her to continue. "What stood out to you?" "There was a clause buried deep inside," Maya explained. "It transferred all liability from Vaughn's firm to Mr. Hale's company if something went wrong. Only one side would take the hit." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but probing. "Why speak up? You were 16. No one asked you to read it." Maya looked directly at Clara, then at Derek before turning back to the jury. "Because just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The courtroom froze. Even the judge's expression shifted, his pen pausing mid-note. Clara's hand twitched involuntarily. Derek didn't smile this time. Cross-examination came hard. Vaughn's attorney tried to rattle her, his questions sharp and condescending. "Miss Williams, did you understand all the legal terminology in that contract?" "No, sir," Maya replied without hesitation. "Do you consider yourself an expert in business law?" "No, sir." "Then why should we trust your interpretation?" Maya met his gaze squarely, her voice unwavering. "Because I don't think you need a degree to see when someone's being set up to fail." The jury watched her with new eyes. Not just a girl, but the voice of every overlooked worker who had ever been told to stay in their lane. After the recess, Jackson took the stand. Victoria asked him one question. "What made you believe her?" He paused, his jaw tightening. "My gut said she was right, but more than that, I remembered something I'd forgotten." "And what was that?" Victoria prompted. Jackson looked toward Maya, his voice thick with emotion. "That integrity doesn't depend on status. Sometimes the janitor's daughter sees the cracks before the board does." Clara Hale followed, her testimony breaking under the weight of the prosecution's evidence. When the audio clip played again, her own voice cold and calculating, she broke down, confessing her role in the scheme. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she sobbed. "I thought if I could just push the deal through, Jackson wouldn't have to know." Outside the courthouse, cameras waited like wolves. Maya exited through the side door, flanked by Victoria and her mother. Jackson followed behind them. "You didn't have to come," Maya said softly. "I owed it to you," he replied. "To be the man you thought I was when you walked into that boardroom." She smiled faintly. "You're getting there." As the trial concluded, a federal clerk approached Victoria privately, handing her a sealed envelope containing evidence of additional offshore accounts linked to Clara and Derek. It confirmed what they already suspected. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a larger pattern of financial predation spanning decades. Before the verdict was delivered, Maya received a final anonymous text. "This isn't over." Who was watching? And what lengths would they go to protect their secrets? The verdict came just before noon. The jury filed in with solemn faces, their expressions unreadable. Maya sat between Victoria and her mother, gripping the hem of her skirt. Jackson stood behind them, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. On the other side of the courtroom, Derek Vaughn smirked faintly, while Clara Hale stared at the floor, her composure crumbling. The judge called the court to order. "On the count of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the count of falsifying financial documents, guilty. On the count of obstruction and tampering with legal contracts, guilty." Each word fell like a gavel striking stone, a lifetime of manipulation undone. Derek's smirk vanished. Clara closed her eyes, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. The judge issued the sentence swiftly, 10 years in federal prison for both defendants, with no chance of parole in the first 7. Maya exhaled for the first time in days. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. Maya, how does it feel to be the girl who saved a corporation? Mr. Hale, will you rebuild Hale Investments? Victoria, what's next for your young witness? Maya didn't answer them all. Just one. A reporter asked, "What do you want people to remember from this case?" She paused, then looked directly at the nearest camera. That truth doesn't depend on your title, and justice doesn't care how clean your shoes are. In the weeks that followed, Hale Investments didn't collapse. It reformed. Jackson initiated a full restructuring, removing Clara's name from every official board record. Vaughn's assets were frozen, and Victoria Chan was brought on as Chief Ethics Counsel. Maya Williams, meanwhile, was offered a full scholarship to Columbia University. At a press conference inside the building she once cleaned, Jackson announced the news personally. Today, Hale Investments is establishing the Maya Williams Fellowship for Young Minds with Vision and Courage. Maya didn't just protect this company, she reminded us who we are supposed to be. Applause rose like thunder. Maya stood beside him, the faintest smile on her lips. Later that night, Jackson sat in his office, alone. Maya entered, holding a manila envelope. "I got my Columbia acceptance letter," she said, her eyes shining. He smiled. "You earned more than that. You've got a seat at any table you want now." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret any of it?" He looked out the window, the skyline of Chicago glowing gold. "I regret that I didn't see it coming," he said softly. "But I don't regret who stood up when I couldn't." She nodded, then left the envelope on his desk. Days later, Clara Hale was processed into the federal detention center in Wisconsin. She made no statement, no appeal, only silence. In a cold concrete cell, her empire reduced to static in the news, she replayed the audio that sealed her fate. "Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The words echoed again and again in a quiet office above. A city reborn, Jackson placed Maya's envelope on a shelf above his desk, beside his most treasured awards. Beside it, a plaque read, "Truth isn't loud, but it lasts." He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes. A girl once pointed to a signature and changed everything. And now, from the ashes of deceit, a new foundation stood tall. Cleaner, stronger, and unshakably honest. The empire hadn't fallen. It had been rebuilt by the one they never saw. If this story moved you, share it with friends, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. Until next time, stay curious.